Man, I feel kind of naked up here without my mining helmet on. Last time I saw you guys, I had my warhammers and my helmet. So today I want to talk to you about, of course, sustainable mining. One of the things that excites me so much about BSV right now in this critical moment is that we have a chance to get mining right. For 10 years, mining's been around, and for 10 years, no chain or coin has actually gotten it correct. See, most coins just treat miners as second-class citizens. They assume that they chase profit instead of actually understanding the dynamics or the mechanics of mining. Miners enter into social contracts with a network. Specifically, miners agree to invest significant amounts of capital and electricity in order to secure the network. That has to be protected, and that has to be acknowledged. BSV actually has a chance to bring back mining and bring back a lot of confidence for miners in a chain. So one of the key fundamentals is that miners are the backbone of proof of work, and a happy miner means a happy chain. What that means is that as a chain, we have a responsibility to ensure that miners' revenues are secured. That means that we have to ensure that we have transaction fees, we have suitable block sizes, but it also means a little bit more than that. It also means that we have to ensure that we have partnerships in the ecosystem that help sustain and keep mining alive. So the first important step is transactions per second, that mythical benchmark that we're all chasing. We all want BSV to have, Visa-like transaction speed. How does that actually happen? Well, most people think that it just happens through one factor. Maybe it just happens through block size. Maybe it just happens through block propagation. Maybe it just happens through network speed. Actually, it's a combination of everything. So one of the things that we can do as miners to uphold our bargain of the social contract is we can start investing in nodes. Unfortunately, the presentation is not the one I loaded up, but it's all about nodes. So the node game is as important to mining as hash rate or electricity cost. Specifically, it's not about just mining the block, it's about ensuring that your block is broadcast to your peers as soon as possible. Nodes are one of the things that most miners don't invest in. It doesn't generate a lot of revenue. It consumes a lot of storage space. It consumes a lot of network speed. But one of the things that we need to do as miners is ensure that we're doing our part to bring up BSV's scalability, which means we need to start investing in nodes. Now, the interesting thing about BSV is that it's actually forcing us to actually invest in node infrastructure. Block propagation is incredibly important. So one of the things we also need to do as participants in the BSV ecosystem is we need to educate miners. You have to understand most mining infrastructure today is running on about 60 megabytes per second. In order to sustain 1 gigabyte blocks or 1 terabyte blocks, we need to actually invest into our node infrastructure and bring it up to around 100 megabytes, 200 megabytes, so on and so forth. The other important piece is block size. So this one is a personal pet peeve. Many people don't realize that miners are actually incredibly frustrated with the block size in other chains, specifically because it means missed out revenues. So this is a screen cap from the Bitcoin network. And it's what I'm most comfortable with, so it's what I want to talk about specifically. So most of the miners right now, there's about 70% of the ecosystem on Bitcoin. The transaction rate growth for Bitcoin has been quite predictable. And in 2019, we can see from the linear growth that there's kind of an appetite for about 1.5 megabyte blocks. However, there's been a cap limit of 1.25 megabyte. Why? Well, part of it's SegWit, part of it is the Lightning Network. Now, if we had been able to capture that extra 0.25 megabytes of data, then we would have been able to secure 172 million USD worth of daily transaction volume. That's really important for miners. We subsist on transaction volume to get our revenues. The block reward isn't enough. Now, why is it like this? Well, we all know about SegWit. We all understand SegWit. Unfortunately, most miners don't understand what SegWit is. They don't know how to participate in the network. They don't know how to capture those network fees. They're just not involved in the politics. They're not involved in the ecosystem like a lot of developers are or like a lot of infrastructure providers. They just do not understand, and that's okay. So one of the things we need to do is ensure we don't change the protocol. Obviously, BSV doesn't. That's why I'm kind of excited about it. The other thing is that miners right now have to make a choice. On BTC specifically, they have to make a choice of, hey, do we change and switch off our ASIC boost, which actually brings a lot of longevity to a fleet of mining ASICs, specifically if your electricity cost is a little higher, or do we go for SegWit and capture the transaction volume? You have to understand, most miners right now out in the ecosystem aren't very knowledgeable. They understand how to put an ASIC in a facility. They understand how to change their wallet. They don't understand how to set up a SegWit node. They don't understand what ASIC boost is. They just want a plug-and-play environment. This is one of the brilliant reasons why BSV has a future in mining. So 172 million USD worth of daily transactions could have been captured. What does that actually mean? Well, right now, 8.63% of transaction fees are coming from the Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash network from miners. Because we failed to capture 172 million USD every day, we lost $14.8 million in transaction fees. Miners lost that source of revenue. That is not a fair that is not upholding our end of the social contract in the Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash network. This is one of the things we need to be telling miners in the BSV ecosystem. This is important. This is powerful. Finally, a chain is upholding its end of the bargain. So, like I said, as miners, we do enter into a social contract. You know, we invest significant amounts of electricity, significant amounts of hardware, and we say that we will continue to participate and secure the chain and extend the chain. Now, what happens when we don't uphold our end of the bargain, our end of the social contract? The chain becomes weaker, and application developers move elsewhere, and so on and so forth. It becomes a flywheel of negativity. BSV is finally doing something right, and I'm actually proud to stand here on stage, even though I represent a lot of the mining community as a whole, and say that I actually fully support it. Right now, there's no chain that has started to listen to miners and started to invest in them. So it's a chain's responsibility to ensure that we're securing revenues for miners. But there's more than just the miners and the network and the infrastructure and the pool. So there's the piece about specialization. And this is something I uphold very dear to myself. So obviously, you know, joining an infrastructure company, I get a lot of questions. Specifically, the question is, Kristy, you could be doing anything in your life. Why on earth are you working building data centers? I'm like, well, that's a very good question. And you know, the data center word is always said by miners with sort of disdain, as if the flavor of the word has the flavor of a lemon tart almost. Why? Because they treat infrastructure and they treat data centers as sort of an enemy. For so long in the Bitcoin ecosystem, in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, actually in the mining ecosystem as a whole, data centers and specifically specialized infrastructure has been at war with the home miner. You know, co-location really hasn't been a thing at large scale until 2018. So one of the things we do at Core Scientific is we invest heavily in infrastructure, and specifically we invest heavily in specialization to ensure that miner revenues are kept afloat. What do I mean by that? Well, here is, for illustrative purposes, one of our, you know, sort of some of our contracts. So 10,000 S9s monthly mining revenue. Right now, that brings in about $1.26 million USD. Now, one of the things miners often don't specialize in this ecosystem is uptime. Bitcoin has historically been treated as, you know, very much an error-resilient or fault-tolerant ecosystem, which means you don't really pay attention to uptime at all. You just treat ASICs as if they're consumable. Actually, if you actually start investing in uptime, and specifically you invest in regulatory, safe areas, stable power, etc., you end up making more revenue, and you end up minimizing your effective hosting costs. The other piece is optimization. So one of the things we also specialize in at Core Scientific is specifically reverse engineering firmware and figuring out how can we get more optimization out of it. And through all of our wonderful embedded teams' work, we're able to get a 1.2 cent saving on kilowatt an hour cost. See, part of what we have to do to uphold our social contract in the ecosystem as an infrastructure provider is specialize in this. So co-location is not centralization, as I always tell my friends. Actually, it's about using someone else's economies of scale to benefit the ecosystem as a whole. So obviously, at a 6.9 cent base hosting rate, you end up having an equivalent rate right now of 5.47 cents. So this is our part as infrastructure providers that we have to uphold in the ecosystem. And I mean, the last piece is, behind every great technology is a great data center. So sustainable mining needs sort of this backbone of the ecosystem, the backbone of infrastructure. That's what Core Scientific today is providing. And, part of this is also not just data centers, it's also investing in nodes, ensuring that as miners, we're doing our part to support the developers that are pushing these transactions through. Like I said, it's all about social contracts. So the other piece that's incredibly important for miners is that, like I said, they don't really understand the politics of the ecosystem, but they're always very excited about getting in on the ground floor. Miners specifically come into two buckets. They come into the nomadic bucket and the tribalistic bucket. Nomadic miners usually just switch from chain to chain seeking profit, and they are the ones that will just follow the money trail. Now, tribalistic miners are what you want to ensure that you can capture. Tribalistic miners follow the vision. So they expend all of their resources and electricity to get in on the ground floor, hoping that somehow the technology will be fantastic. And these are the ones that you can capture through application development, through a lot of education, through going out and doing outreach. These miners are what ends up sustaining a network because they ensure that they're committing their resources no matter the price. Now, right now, all of the tribalistic miners are usually have turned into nomadic miners simply because they've lost faith in their chain. They've lost faith in the social contract that has to be upheld. We have a chance to capture these miners again, just through outreach, just through education, just through communication. So, final thoughts is, I'm a big believer in chaos theory. So chaos theory is the concept that one small minor change in a system can end up having big effects. Mining is kind of like this. You might not realize it, but small changes in the ecosystem, small changes in the environment, over the course of 10 years have changed the way we've built infrastructure, changed the way that we've thought about distributed computing, changed the way that we've thought about AI optimizations and how we handle data, how we encrypt data, how we verify data. Mining is one of these incredibly sensitive ecosystems that can change the entire world, even though you might not realize it. A great point that I always talk about is back in the days of early ASIC development, back when it was FPGAs. SHA-256D mining actually taught Xilinx how to fix one of their significant security bugs in one of their old Zinc 5 chips, I believe it was. Specifically, when calculating a certain nonce space in the SHA-256D chip, a big error kept getting hit, which caused a buffer overflow, which just caused a chain reaction. This was only discovered way back in the day by Canaan, of all people. So they took that to Xilinx and they helped them patch that up. It's a small example of the chaos theory. Another great example is that thanks to the energy consumption of Bitcoin, and thanks to the fact that miners are so sensitive to profit, we've been taught how to actually start building data centers at scale with minimal thermal impact and with green, clean energy. So all of these really small changes in the ecosystem have started affecting, all of our infrastructure at scale, all of our ecosystem at scale. BSV actually has a chance to be the hub and the root of that. But we have to listen to the miners. We have to let them participate. We have to educate them. Remember, a lot of them do not understand. So what can we do? How can we fix that? Well, part of it is education. Part of it is making a name for ourselves in China, specifically attending some of these conferences and telling them that, hey, the rules of the game are not going to change anymore. You're going to capture transaction fees. You're going to have sustainable profits if you invest now for 10, 20 years. You have a sustainable base. That song has to be sung because miners, again, are not networked in like we are as developers. They don't have a voice. For so long, for the last 10 years, they're frustrated, they're incredibly upset. We have a chance to change all that. That is the power of BSV. That's kind of why I'm excited about this technology. So there's my pitch, there's my speech. You guys have to go out and capture all these miners again. Thank you very much.